Greetings, one and all in one, all for one. 18th day of the month of Kislev, 5778. Countdown, 7 days to the Hanukkah ceremonies. Continuing part 3. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap it up today with parts 3 and 4. Subject: uniting with wicked Jews, ? Last week we brought 2 very important pieces of Chazal, of our sages, which seem to contradict very much so one another. On one hand, the Torah is praising Leah, our mother, for the fact that she cried so much not to end up marrying a wicked person like Esav. On the other hand, we see that Jacob was punished because of the fact that he hid his daughter Dinah from the eyes of Esav, and the Torah teaches us that there was a possibility that Dinah could have brought Esav back to repent. So we have a big contradiction here. Either we're praising Leah for keeping away from a wicked person like Esav. On the other hand, we're condemning Jacob for not allowing his daughter to unite and perhaps influence Esav. We looked and we saw there are 3 inner problems, 3 internal problems with the assumption that Jacob did something wrong. Number 1, the first problem is that it says the conclusion of Jacob not allowing his daughter to be seen by the wicked Esav and ending up in the hands of somebody that was not Jewish, like Eov. And so it says, as we mentioned last week, that because of the fact that Jacob did not allow his daughter to marry somebody within the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we'll call him Israel, even though we mentioned there is a dispute on whether Esav had the Jewish law, had a law of being Jewish, or he had a law of being a Noahite. But we're going to go, with this class, we're going on the assumption that he was in the family, he was part of the Jewish nation. And therefore, because of the fact that Jacob did what he did, instead of Dinah being handed over and marrying somebody from the tribe, so to speak, and also someone that was circumcised, Esav, she ends up somebody that's outside the ballpark, somebody that's not Jewish, somebody that's not circumcised. We said this is very difficult because there are a few places that we saw within the workings of the sages that say that for Esav's entire life he was never circumcised. He wasn't circumcised when he was born, and he wasn't circumcised later on in life. So what is the Torah trying to tell us? That, oh, you know what Jacob did? He did something terrible. Dinah could have married a person that was circumcised. No, he wasn't circumcised. So exactly, what do we do? That's internal. That's the internal problem number 1. Second problem that we have is that there are 2 other sources that explain why Jacob was punished, and it's not the fact that he hid his daughter from the eyes of Esav. There are other sins, we'll call them sins, that the sages point out is the reason why Jacob was punished. So you have to make up your mind here. Was he punished for the fact that he hid his daughter from the eyes of Esav, or was he punished for other reasons? Third difficulty with this piece of our sages is that the Torah as a whole, to say the least, we could spend a couple of days just talking about the Torah's directive is very clear, that stay away from people that are wicked, We say it in our prayers every single morning, and it's in our literature. It's all over the place. You want to keep away from bad influences. Person is very, very influential. Person is very influential. I was just reading recently, this week I was reading some kind of test that they were doing, giving people the Pepsi test, or there was like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and RC. And you have to say which one was the tastiest one. Most people did not believe. They said that this is the tastiest one and this is Coca-Cola. Why? Because that's the way they grew up. That's what they heard. You know, it's the taste of life. But the truth of the matter is, who really won that contest was Pepsi. Pepsi, I mean, like, this is not a push for Pepsi. Stay away from that poison stuff. But it's just interesting how people are very influenced. All these people taking the taster choice test, they kept on arguing that no, it was really Coca-Cola and you're fooling us, or you slipped something by us, but it has to be Coca-Cola because that's the greatest. And it's not. But that's what people what people hear is that people are very, very influenced by what they hear, by the news, by the media, by Hollywood. People are, as we know, very influenced. So how could it be, God Almighty here, how could it be that the Torah is criticizing Jacob for hiding his daughter? We should actually give him a medal, like the gold medal here, for hiding his daughter from a wicked guy like Esau. So what in the world is going on here? So we have three internal problems here with what's going on. Besides for the contradiction between Leah, who the Torah compliments for staying away from the wicked Esau, and on the other hand, we have the condemnation of Jacob for hiding his daughter from that same wicked guy Esau. Okay, so we're in kind of like a mess over here. We're in kind of like a salad here. How are we going to get out of this? Okay, so with God's help, we're going to go through quickly. We're going to go through about 7 answers to the question with God's help. Okay, answer number 1. There is really no difference between Dinah and Leah. No difference. How could that be? It seems like one did not want to get married, one stayed away, and one was punished because they stayed away. So let's look how this is possible. According to one of the major commentaries on Rashi, the commentary is called Maskil David, says the following. He says, what's the problem? Why is Leah crying all the time that she does not want to marry this wicked? She grew up and she always heard that, just like Lavan has 2 daughters, Isaac has 2 sons. And the oldest son for the oldest daughter, the youngest son to the youngest daughter. So she grew up hearing that she, being the oldest daughter, was going to marry the oldest son, which was Esau, who came out firstborn. So why does she really care, and why is she crying? Like, save your tears, Save your tears. Like, I would save my tears like when the Cubs lost, against the Dodgers in one of the playoff games. I would save my tears for that, Or for some of the Chicago teams this year, I would save my tears for that. Why is she crying? We know that there's a Jewish law that if you're not interested in marrying somebody, we see it even earlier times where the wicked family of Rebekah, they asked Rebekah if she wants to go and get married to Isaac. So they asked permission. So you have to ask permission. So why is she crying? Just say no and save your tears for something else. So the Maskil of David says something very interesting. Why was she crying? Because she knew that if it came down, if she was up against the wall, and Esau actually asked to marry, she knew that the right thing to do was to marry him. And because she knew that she could influence him, she perhaps could influence him to become a better person. But it was a question mark in her eyes. So she knew that she had a possibility of influencing Esav. So if push came to shove, and Esav came and popped the question, she would have said yes. Therefore, she was crying that such a situation would never come up. Once again, of course she had free will to say yes or no. That she knew. But she knew that if push came to shove, she would say yes, because she knew that, well, that was the right thing to do. So therefore, there is no difference, really, there's no difference between Dinah and Leah. Both of them had the possibility to change around Esav. So basically, it's not surprising that Jacob was punished, because of the fact that the right thing to do was to give over either Dinah or to give over Leah to a guy like Esav. That was the proper thing to do. So therefore, she cried, because even though it was the right thing to do, she didn't want to get involved in such a situation. It happens to us many times in life. Sometimes we have to stand up to the plate. That doesn't mean that we choose really to be there. You know, you could help people out, but a lot of times you pay a price, the fact that you're also being influenced. So a person might say, listen, I don't want to take a chance on my own spirituality. It's true that I could help somebody out, but there's a price for everything. You know, there's a price for everything. All these people, all these great people that spend their times, you know, they go to discos, they go to nightclubs, they go to the bars, and they try to, you know, influence people. Of course there's a price tag to the fact that they're being influenced. They're being influenced. You know, a lot of times you listen to a class, different parts of the world. You could hear the influence. I mean, I was really shocked. I was listening to a class a couple of days ago somewhere from the States, you know, a class on the Torah, and they're wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and you know, they're like, whoa, like, what's going on over here? And everybody's on vacation, but it ain't our holiday. So these are things that influence us. So Leah basically was saying, you know, if he asks me, if he pops the question, I'm going to say yes, because that's the right thing to do. But I really don't want to get involved in it. I'm really praying that he doesn't. That's why she was crying, because she was praying that he wouldn't ask the question, because she knew that even though she might influence him, of course it's going to take a toll on her spirituality also. Number one. Number two, we see also that there is no contradiction here between Dinah and Esav. Listen here closely. The Talmud tells us in Bava Batra, in the tractate of Bava Batra, page 123, side 1, tells us something very interesting. Listen closely. We never really, if it wasn't for the Ben Ish Chai, the commentary of the Ben Ish Chai, we really wouldn't notice this, but it really sticks out in your mind when you hear this. The story is that the first time Leah heard people on the street talking about the fact that the two children of Isaac would marry the two children of Lavan, she asked the following question. She said, can you tell me about the firstborn Esau, because I'm also the firstborn, and you're saying that I'm going to join up, I'm going to marry him. Could you tell me a few details about this guy? So they tell how wicked this guy is, Esau. And then she doesn't cry. And then she asks, according to the Talmud, then she asks, can you tell me about the younger son, Jacob? Oh, he's so righteous, such a great person, he's really a beautiful soul, and we haven't seen anyone on his level, you know, ever. And then she starts crying. So the Ben Ish Chai asks an obvious question. When should she have started crying? She should have started crying after she knows she's the eldest, and therefore she should have cried after she heard the deeds of Esau. But the deeds of Esau did not make her cry. When she hears the good deeds, the righteous deeds of Jacob, all of a sudden she's crying. It's exactly the opposite here. It's an upside down world. What's going on? He says an unbelievable Torah. Why did she cry after hearing Jacob? Because she said very simply, if Jacob is such a righteous person, and after living so many years with his brother Esau, was not able to spiritually improve his brother Esau, who am I compared to Jacob to influence him? And that's why she cried. She cried because she understood that there was no chance of her influencing the likes of Esau. He was such a wicked person, there was no chance. So therefore, there's no contradiction here. According to what the sages say, why was Jacob punished? Because of the fact that he had Dinah, who could have influenced. Dinah was a different situation. But as far as Leah was concerned, Leah, once she heard that the righteous Jacob could not influence his own brother, she knew that she had no choice here. She knew that there was a no-win situation. There was no way that she would go and influence. So that was just a different situation. Her situation was different than her sister, her daughter Dinah. Okay, now next answer that we have here is that. Second answer is there is an essential, fundamental difference between the two characters, between Dinah and Leah. Fundamental difference. And we'll bring down a few sources that discuss this. First source is called Question and Answer on the portion of the week. It's by Rabbi Yecheskel Scheinfeld on page 74-75. He brings up a beautiful point. He says you have to look at these two righteous women, Dinah on one hand and Leah, and you have to understand there's a fundamental difference between the two. There's no comparison. Why? Because who is this Leah? Whose family is Leah from? Whose family is Leah from? She is from a totally wicked family. She was brought up in a wicked neighborhood. She was brought up by wicked parents. And therefore, when we look at Dinah, exactly the opposite. Dinah grew up in a tremendously supportive family. There was no support by Leah. Leah was a loner. Leah was on her own. No one's going to come to the defense of Leah. No one's going to stand up to Esau and say, listen, you want to marry? You want to marry our sister? You want to marry our cousin or our whatever, our niece? Here are the conditions. If you agree, go ahead. We're happy to have you in our family. If not, get lost. She had no family strength, no backbone. But Dinah was totally supported. She had a tremendous support system. In fact, when she gets attacked in the city of Shechem, by Shechem, the son of Hamor, look what happens. All of her brothers come to her defense. Not only do they come to the defense, they take apart the whole city of Shechem in her defense. Amazing thing. So she knows she's in good hands here. She knows that she's protected. She knows that you got her back. So this is a tremendous point that the rabbi here brings out in his work, in his classical work here. Therefore, the Torah compliments Leah because Leah was a lone wolf. She was on her own, and you can't expect her to really have an influence on such a low-life, experienced low-life like Esau. I mean, he'd just take her apart. So she is complimented for staying away. On the other hand, Dinah comes from a tremendously strong background and family, and they're there for her, and there's no playing around. The family would have come up if Jacob would have allowed her to be seen by Esau, the family would definitely have come up to Esau and say, listen, if you want our righteous daughter, no problem, but you have to sign on down the line. We want you to learn maybe 5 or 10 years in the yeshiva in Tapuach, or somewhere else in maybe Esha Torah. You got to learn there 5 or 10 years, and then we'll get this wedding together. They would sit down and write conditions. Where do we see something similar in the Talmud? A beautiful case. Rabbi Yochanan, who was a beautiful, very handsome man, he was swimming in the Jordan River. And all of a sudden, he sees a guy like jumping a tremendous, wow, one of these Olympic medal kind of leaps. And he says, wow, he sees the guy, he's the head of all the thieves in the area. His name was Reish Lakish. He sees this guy and he's flying, from one side he's taking these gigantic hops. And he says, well, you have tremendous strength. You should dedicate your strength to learning of the Torah. You'll be a great Torah scholar. If I see a tremendous amount of strength, you're a strong person. Take that strength and put it into the world of Torah, to put it in the world to perfect yourself, to perfect your characteristic traits. And they start talking, and Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, listen, if you agree to these certain conditions, and of sitting down for some amount of years and learning Torah and to improve yourself, if you agree to such conditions, I promise to give you my sister. What, is this guy nuts? What, Rabbi Yochanan, are you crazy? You're going to give your own sister? Yeah, he's going to give his own sister. Why? Because she's taken care of. Rabbi Yochanan's sister has a guy like Rabbi Yochanan who's sitting down there and he's making conditions with the head of the bandits, Reish Lakish. And to make a long story short, Reish Lakish became one of the greatest Talmudic scholars ever. He repented and he married, eventually he did marry the sister of Rabbi Yochanan. So when you got your brothers out there, protecting you and looking out for your benefit, there's no problem. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan did the right thing, and he set up conditions before agreeing to give over his sister to the likes of the head bandit, Reish Lakish. Okay, continuing. The Chabad Rebbe, in his commentary on the commentary of Rashi, on page 220, in the portion is Vayishlach. He says the following tremendous statement. He says the following, that it says by the sages that Jacob was uncertain if Dinah would be able to influence Esau to repent. He was not certain. It was a question mark in his eyes. And the Rebbe from Chabad says an amazing thing. It was only a question mark in the eyes of Jacob. But as far as truth is concerned, there was no question. Because she was such a tremendous woman, that there was no question. If she would have got her hand, so to speak, on the likes of Esau, she would have brought him back to repent. An amazing thing by the Rebbe that he says. There was no question mark. It was only in the eyes of Jacob that there was a question. But as far as reality goes, if Esau would have agreed to marry her, and she would have agreed to marry him, she would have brought Esau back to becoming a righteous person like he was at the first 13 years of his life. So we see here, you cannot compare the two characters. Leah did not have the strength that her daughter had, Dinah. She did not have that strength. So, as many questions in life, you can't just give one answer. Not one size fits all. It would be nice if one size fits all, but that's not the way life works many times. Many times people have questions, and it depends who you are. if you're Leah, the right thing for Leah to do was to keep away and pray that she should not fall in the hands of such a wicked person like Esau. However, there are exceptions to the rule. There are certain people in the generation that are so special, that have so much talent, so much power, spiritual power, that they are an exception to the rule, but not the rule. Another essential, fundamental difference between the two. It says in Tractate Brachot, page 60, side 1, an amazing thing. Listen to the righteousness of Leah. Leah had 6 children. Leah had 6 children. She had Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun. The 2 midwives each had 2 kids. Dan, Naphtali were Bilhah's children and the midwife's children, and Gad ve'Asher were the midwife of Zilpah, the midwife of Jacob, of Leah. They were her children. So it's 6, 2, and 2. 6, 2, and 2. And so it says in the Talmud that Leah cried out to God, please, I do not want my sister to be embarrassed, because right now Leah was pregnant with Joseph. Leah was pregnant with Joseph, and now she would have 7 kids, and Rachel would just have 1 kid, Benjamin. And therefore, Rachel would feel terrible that she wasn't even on the level of the 2 kids of the midwives. Each of the midwives had 2 kids. And Rachel, my sister's going only to have 1. So she prayed that the sex of the child would change. And she prayed, and because it was at the beginning of the Talmud gives us a 40-day period where a person could pray for the sex of the child to change. So therefore, she prayed that the sex of the child would switch from a male to a female. So therefore, Joseph goes over to Rachel, and Rachel was really supposed to have Dinah. But then she would have just 1 son, and then she would be on a lower level, even though the midwives. So this tremendous kindness that Leah did. Okay, so listen to what's happening here. Amazing thing. It means that what we're saying here is that Dinah has the power of a male, which means really what's going on here. If you remember, if you recall last week, we quoted the sages in Breshit Rabbah 17, and we said, we gave a story about a righteous man and a righteous woman. They got divorced. Each went, because they didn't have any children, each went their own way. And the conclusion of the story is that everything goes according to the woman. If the woman is a spiritual person, she will influence wicked people. And if the woman is a wicked person, then she will influence righteous people. It all goes according to the woman.